The void of the Erythra star cluster was silent, save for the groaning metal of a lone human freighter twisting through a gauntlet of glowing asteroids. Captain Elias Rane gripped the controls, his knuckles white under the flickering hololight. Red alerts flashed across the dashboard. Xeran patrol ships were closing fast, their sleek black hulls reflecting distant stars like predators tracking wounded prey. "Come on, old girl," Elias muttered, fingers dancing over the console. The freighter shuddered as a massive rock scraped against the hull. Sparks leapt across the metal plates, illuminating the cramped cockpit in fleeting bursts of orange. He angled the ship, dodging debris that could shred the hull in seconds. "Xerans detected," the AI announced, its voice flat, almost cold. "They are initiating pursuit protocols." Elias leaned forward, eyes narrowing. He had no intention of surrendering. The cargo bay held supplies, medkits, food, and water, bound for Nova Eden, a hidden human colony on a frozen moon far beyond the Empire's immediate reach. If the Xeran seized it, hundreds of lives would vanish in one merciless strike. The first warning blast tore through the void, grazing the freighter's wing and sending tremors through the cockpit. Elias swore and slammed the thrusters, weaving through the asteroid storm like a dancer in a hurricane. Streaks of light and debris whipped past, each one a potential death sentence. He knew the Xerans assumed humans were fragile, short-lived sparks against their cosmic might. Most of them never imagined a human could outmaneuver, outthink, and endure. That assumption was about to cost them. "Engage the gravity flares," Elias ordered. Tiny pods ejected from the ship, their micro-gravitational pulses twisting asteroid paths, turning natural hazards into weapons. The Xeran ships faltered, colliding with rocks or overcorrecting their courses. One exploded spectacularly, a black silhouette engulfed in fire. The cockpit trembled as another blast grazed the freighter. Warning sirens screamed. Elias's heart pounded, not from fear but from the adrenaline that always sharpened a human's senses at the edge of impossible odds. He had trained for moments like this, though no simulation could capture the chaos of real death twisting through an asteroid field. Ahead, a narrow corridor opened between two massive rocks, barely wide. Enough for the freighter. Elias gritted his teeth and banked sharply, scraping one hull side against jagged rock. Sparks flew like fireworks in the void. The Xerans followed, but he had prepared for this. The corridor's twist would trap larger ships, forcing them to break or crash. The lead patrol ship jammed, lurching against the side of a monolithic asteroid. Its weapons misfired, and Elias seized the chance to accelerate. The human freighter, battered but unbroken, shot through the narrowing passage like a needle threading itself through cosmic fabric. Yet escape was only temporary. Behind him, the remaining Xeran ships reorganized, their formations tightening like a noose. Elias checked his fuel reserves, calculating the odds. He could outrun them, but not indefinitely. Every decision now carried weight measured in lives. Nova Eden coordinates locked, Elias whispered, setting the autopilot for the outer rim jump. He leaned back for a fraction of a second, knowing the Empire would not let him reach his destination unscathed. But for a human, moments of daring were currency. Moments like this could carve victory out of the jaws of certain defeat. The first stars of the outer rim shimmered ahead, distant but tantalizing. The freighter shuddered as the last Xeran ship unleashed its plasma cannons, lighting up the void like a miniature sun. A streak of green fire grazed the hull, sending sparks cascading across the cockpit. Elias's heart roared with a mix of fear and exhilaration. He was a single human, facing an empire that spanned star systems, yet every fiber of his being refused submission. And in that moment, something primal and unmistakably human surged through him. The courage to defy, the will to survive, and the ingenuity to turn the universe itself into an ally. The freighter lurched into the darkness beyond the asteroid storm, disappearing from Xeran sensors. Behind him, a trail of destruction marked the beginning of a story that the Empire would soon remember. The human who would not bow. The twin suns of Nova Eden barely pierced the planet's frozen atmosphere, casting jagged shadows across cliffs of blue ice that glittered like shattered glass. HumAlien's freighter descended through the storm-swept valleys, its hull groaning against the gusting winds. Every flake of snow that hit the ship seemed to drum a warning. The Empire would not let him deliver his cargo in peace. Nova Eden ahead, the AI reported, voice calm, but Elias could feel the tension in the hum of the engines. The colony's domes shimmered faintly beneath layers of frost, lights flickering like trapped fireflies. He could almost hear the whispers of the settlers, hopes pinned on supplies that might never arrive. Elias guided the freighter down to the landing platform, eyes scanning the horizon. The storm concealed more than snow. He could see glimmers of distant movement. The subtle shimmer of Xiran scout ships, cloaked against human sensors, patrolled the edges of the frozen valleys. Every second brought the possibility of discovery. The ramp hissed as it lowered, revealing colonists bundled against the cold. Faces lit by dim lanterns turned upward in silent awe as Elias stepped onto the icy ground. Children clung to parents' hands, and elders shuffled forward, leaning on crutches and determination alike. Supplies were their lifeline, but the threat of the Empire hung above like a storm cloud ready to burst. "Unload quickly," Elias ordered, keeping his voice low but firm. "And stay ready." The colonists moved with practiced urgency, unpacking rations, medical kits, and spare generators. Yet each shadow seemed alive, twisting with the possibility of danger. Elias's hand never strayed far from his sidearm. Every flake of snow carried the tension of unseen watchers. Then the first warning came, a distant pulse of light across the horizon, too precise to be natural. Elias froze. Xiran scouts, cloaked ships revealing themselves just enough to send a message. "You are being watched." "They're probing," Elias muttered, scanning the icy ridges. "They want to see how fast we react." He activated a series of sensor buoys, each one pinging a network of alerts. If Xirans tried to land, he would know before they reached the colony. A sudden gust of wind threw a drift across the platform, momentarily hiding the approaching shadow. Elias tensed, pulse pounding, as a low hum grew from the valley's edge. From behind the ice cliffs, a single Xiran scout ship emerged, slicing through the storm like a black dagger. Its weapons glowed, waiting for a signal that would end everything. "Not today," Elias whispered. With the colonists behind him, he raised his arm, signaling them to disperse into shelters. Snow sprayed in arcs as he sprinted across the frozen landing pad, sliding beneath a sudden volley of plasma fire. Sparks erupted around him, hissing as the projectiles struck ice and metal alike. The scout ship banked, trying to catch him in its targeting grid. Elias ducked into the shadows of a supply dome, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed that a single misstep could kill not only him, but the entire colony. But human instinct was more than fear. It was ingenuity. Using the colony's minimal defenses, Elias triggered automated turrets hidden behind frost-covered walls. The first volley of laser fire pinged off the scout ship's hull, forcing it into evasive maneuvers. Elias darted between structures, each step calculated to bait the enemy into overextension. A second scout ship materialized from the storm, its presence threatening to cut off his escape. Elias's mind raced. Humans thrived where others relied on sheer force. He drew a deep breath and activated a frozen minefield mapped by previous expeditions, an improvised gauntlet of ice and explosives. The mines detonated in brilliant bursts, sending shards of ice spinning into the void. The first Xiran ship veered violently, struggling to maintain balance as plasma arcs danced across its hull. The second hesitated, unsure whether to press forward or retreat. Elias felt the weight of 1,000 frozen eyes on him, the colonists hidden in shelters, watching the human who refused to kneel. Each move, each calculation, was a lesson in survival and defiance. The Xirans were powerful, but they lacked the adaptability that humans wielded like a weapon. Finally, the storm swallowed the remaining ships, forcing them back into orbit. Elias slumped against the icy wall, breath fogging in the cold air. Supplies were delivered. The colonists were safe, for now. But he knew this was only the beginning. In the flickering light of the colony domes, a single truth glimmered like frost on steel. Humans could endure the storm, outthink the Empire, and inspire hope where fear had long reigned. And as long as Elias drew breath, the galaxy would never forget the spark of defiance that burned within a human heart. Far across the star cluster, the Xiran capital loomed like a crown of jagged glass, its spires piercing twin suns with crystalline precision. Light fractured through the towers, scattering into rainbows that danced across the obsidian streets below. From orbit, it appeared untouchable, a palace of power designed to remind all who looked upon it of Ziran dominance. Inside the High Council chamber, Admiral Krivos stared at a hollow projection of a battered human freighter zigzagging through asteroid storms. Sparks and explosions dotted the hologram, each mark a testament to human audacity. The council murmured, voices vibrating with disbelief. "Impossible," one counselor hissed. "No single human should survive such maneuvers against a patrol squadron." Krivos's claws tapped rhythmically against the crystalline table. "Humans," he growled, "are a variable we have underestimated for far too long." His eyes, sharp and calculating, traced the trajectory of Elias Rand's evasive patterns. "They rely not on numbers, but on unpredictability and cunning. They are small, yes, but dangerous." A younger counselor, green with fear, asked, "Should we deploy the Dread Fleet? Crush them before they inspire rebellion?" Krivos's gaze snapped. "The Dread Fleet is overkill. Let us be patient. Let us test them. A single human against our scout ships. How far can ingenuity carry one life?" His claws curled into fists. "We will make them dance. And when they fail, the galaxy will remember why humans are expendable." Across the capital, shadows moved with intent. Elite Ziran strike teams prepared vessels designed for precision attacks. Cloaked and silent, they awaited orders, each crew drilled to exploit a human's single vulnerability: predictability. Yet Krivos knew unpredictability was humanity's deadliest weapon. Meanwhile, light years away, Elias was unaware of the shadow growing over him. Nova Eden's icy cliffs had quieted, but every gust of wind, every glint of distant starlight carried the tension of invisible watchers. Humans had survived battles before, but now the full weight of a star-spanning empire was aware of them. The odds were shifting, and the game was changing. Back in the Ziran capital, a plan was being forged as intricate and dangerous as the spires themselves. Krivos studied the hologram, marking points of human ingenuity. Every maneuver, every trick that allowed a lone human to survive where fleets had failed. The Empire would respond, but their response would have to anticipate not just skill, but creativity, a quality they had never fully understood. On Nova Eden, Elias watched the horizon. Frost clung to his hair and clothing, but he did not flinch. The colony had survived the first probe, but he sensed something larger approaching. His instincts, honed through years of facing impossible odds, whispered of shadows in orbit, of plans that could unfold faster than he could react. He activated hidden sensors, scanning the icy ridges and orbital paths. Small movements, subtle distortions in the auroras hinted at cloaked vessels. The Zirans were patient predators, and patience could be more dangerous than aggression. Elias' mind raced, calculating contingencies for a threat that was invisible but certain. The colony's children pressed against the domed windows, unaware of the imperceptible eyes observing them. To them, Elias was a hero, but he knew heroes were often only as safe as the smallest tactical advantage they could exploit. Every instinct screamed caution, yet caution alone would not save them. Only ingenuity, the defining trait of humanity, could tilt the scales. Krivos's message, unspoken but clear across light years, was a challenge. Test the human. Break them. Observe their limits. Elias, oblivious to the full weight of the trap, prepared the colony. Automated defenses hummed quietly behind frost-covered walls. Mines lay hidden beneath ice drifts. Every device, every tactic relied on human creativity to amplify what the Empire deemed insignificant. And as night fell over Nova Eden, painting the ice cliffs in eerie blues and purples, Elias felt a thrill that only humans could know. The exhilaration of standing against an empire that expected fear, yet found defiance instead. Somewhere in the void, the Zirans plotted. Somewhere else, a single human prepared to prove that ingenuity could outmatch power, that courage could outshine fleets, and that defiance could ripple across the stars. The human who had survived impossible odds was about to face a test unlike any before, and the galaxy would soon learn why humans were never meant to be underestimated. Night over Nova. Eden was alive with whispers of movement. The wind howled through crystalline spires of ice, carrying faint echoes of something alien, something waiting. Elias Rain crouched behind a jagged outcrop, scanning the horizon with eyes that had grown accustomed to reading danger in shadows. The Zirans had returned, not with brute force, but with subtlety. Cloaked vessels drifting in geosynchronous orbit, waiting for the perfect moment. They were patient predators, and patience was often deadlier than aggression. Elias's mind raced, mapping contingencies for every possible strike. Each step, each breath was a calculation. Survival was no longer just instinct, it was strategy. From the ice cliffs above, a flicker of light betrayed the first of the Empire's strike teams, silent, precise, moving like wraiths over the frozen surface. The human freighter had delivered supplies, yes, but it had also left a trail, a breadcrumb for the Empire to follow. Elias clenched his jaw. The gambit had begun. He activated concealed turrets, their hidden barrels glinting in the dim starlight. Motion sensors hummed quietly beneath frost-crusted rocks, ready to detect the faintest disturbance. Elias knew he could not fight them all head-on. His strength lay in unpredictability, in turning every hazard into a weapon. The Zirans expected obedience to physics and probability. They had not accounted for human ingenuity. The first strike team emerged, moving in synchrony, their armor reflecting the frozen moonscape like obsidian mirrors. Elias allowed them to approach, luring them toward a narrow canyon where ice spikes rose like teeth. He had rigged explosives in advance, fragile yet deadly, triggered by pressure pads and motion sensors. A simple path became a gauntlet, a human mind turning the landscape into a trap. The first Ziran fell into the trap with a hiss and an explosion of ice shards. The team faltered, momentarily confused by a hazard that should not have existed. Elias did not hesitate. He fired precise bursts from concealed positions, each shot designed to destabilize, not necessarily to kill, buying him time to maneuver. From above, the cloaked vessels began their descent, plasma cannons glowing faintly through the storm. Elias knew this was only the first layer of the gambit. He activated reflective panels along ice ridges, bouncing incoming fire back into the hulls of the orbiting ships. Sparks flared in the frozen night, tiny meteor showers of engineered chaos. The Zirans faltered, unaccustomed to an enemy who could use the environment itself as a weapon. Then came the unexpected, a second wave of Ziran scouts emerging from the storm shadows, flanking his position. Elias's heart raced, but fear had long been replaced by calculation. He ducked into a narrow crevice, silently detonating charges above. Snow and ice cascaded downward, cutting off the flanking scouts and forcing them into a choke point. Every move was deliberate, every action a lesson in turning weakness into strength. The colonists, watching from hidden shelters, saw only flashes of light and heard the distant booms echoing through the valleys. They did not see Elias slipping through shadows, guiding them like a conductor leading a symphony of survival. To them, he was a human legend in the making, a single life capable of defying a star-spanning empire. Hours passed like minutes. When the storm finally eased, The battlefield was quiet, littered with debris, scorch marks, and the remnants of ice traps. Elias emerged, unscathed but exhausted, surveying the aftermath. The Zirans had tested him, and he had turned their test into proof of human resilience and cunning. Yet he knew this victory was temporary. The Empire was patient, and patience bred strategies far more intricate and deadly than a single night's ambush. Nova Eden had survived, but only by the razor's edge of human ingenuity and courage. The stakes were higher now, the Empire aware of a variable they could not predict. Elias allowed himself a brief moment to breathe, snow swirling around him like frozen sparks. In that moment, he realized a truth that would echo across the stars. Humans thrived where others relied on power alone. We turned disadvantage into strategy, fear into fuel, and impossibility into opportunity. And somewhere in the void above, cloaked in darkness, the Zirans prepared for the next move, unaware that the human they sought to crush had already learned how to play a game that stretched across worlds, and that humanity never played to lose. The void above Nova Eden shimmered with silent menace. Cloaked Ziran dreadnoughts glided through orbit, their hulls absorbing starlight as if swallowing the stars themselves. Far below, the colony stirred uneasily. They had survived skirmishes before, but the ominous shapes in the sky were different. This time, the predators were patient, relentless, and armed with knowledge of human tactics. Elias Run moved along the icy ridges, every step measured, every breath a calculation. He sensed it, the Empire's shadow creeping closer, more deliberate than before. This was no longer a raid, it was a hunt. And for the first time, Elias understood the scale of what he was facing. One human against a star empire might be audacious, but surviving it would require every ounce of ingenuity, courage, and unpredictability humanity could muster. He activated the colony's newly fortified defenses, panels of reflective plasma, ice-buried mines, and automated turrets humming quietly under snow-crusted cliffs. Elias knew the Zirans would test his patience, probing his weaknesses. They would attempt to predict him, and yet, the very act of prediction could be weaponized. He smiled grimly. Humans had always thrived in chaos. Suddenly, a massive shadow split the horizon. A squadron of Ziran assault ships dropped through the atmosphere like falling obsidian knives. Their engines carved fiery trails against the night sky, illuminating the ice cliffs in bursts of pale orange. The human defenders braced for impact, eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. Elias didn't wait. He signaled detonations along narrow passes, triggering avalanches that hurled boulders into the descending ships. Sparks and ice exploded in a symphony of controlled destruction. The first assault ships swerved, their formations breaking under the unpredictable terrain. Humans were small, but their environment was a weapon, and Elias wielded it like a maestro. From orbit, the Ziran dreadnoughts observed, adjusting strategy. They deployed cloaked strike teams, slipping silently through the icy canyons, seeking to outflank the human defenses. Elias anticipated this, having predicted the Empire's response to his traps. He guided automated defenses toward ambush points, channeling the enemy into zones where ice spikes, mines, and precision plasma fire awaited. The clash was both quiet and deafening. Silent skirmishes of cloaked operatives in the snow, punctuated by thunderous explosions of ice and metal. The Zirans moved with military precision, yet human unpredictability turned their advantage against them. Every step Elias took created ripples through the battlefield, forcing the Empire to adapt continuously. Hours stretched as a deadly dance unfolded. Elias darted between ridges, moving unseen, activating hidden charges, redirecting plasma fire, and keeping the colonists safe. His mind was a battlefield map, every calculation a potential survival point. The Zirans, though technologically superior, were frustrated by a foe who refused to fight conventionally. A sudden roar split the icy air. A dreadnought had landed partially, its energy shield slicing through the frost like a comet. Elias knew a direct confrontation was imminent. He signaled the colonists to evacuate to hidden shelters while he prepared the final gambit, the canyon trap. Narrow, steep-sided, and filled with hidden explosives, it was a death sentence for anyone who underestimated it. The Ziran troops advanced, confident in numbers and power. Elias triggered the canyon trap, Explosions cascaded, ice and debris forming a living barrier, scattering squads and forcing the dreadnought into a narrow choke point. Plasma cannons tore through the canyon walls, but Elias's timing and strategy maximized every human advantage. One by one, the Empire's carefully calculated moves faltered against the raw unpredictability of human ingenuity. By dawn, the battlefield was quiet. The Xerans had retreated to orbit, licking wounds they didn't fully understand. The humans of Nova Eden emerged cautiously, shaken but alive. Elias looked over the ice-strewn valley, his breath forming clouds in the cold morning air. He knew this victory was temporary, but it was proof that even against a star-spanning empire, a single human could defy expectation, adapt, and survive. And as the first light of the twin suns touched the ice, Elias realized something deeper. Survival wasn't enough. Humanity had to inspire defiance, to remind the galaxy that no amount of power could predict or contain the indomitable human spirit. In the shadows above, the Xerans observed silently. This human was clever, resourceful, and dangerous. They would return, but Elias would be ready, and the galaxy, whether friend or foe, would learn that humans were not merely survivors. They were unpredictable, unstoppable, and unbreakable. The Xeran Empire does not forgive, it does not forget, and it does not tolerate defiance. Weeks after the battle on Nova Eden, the twin suns rose to reveal a calm that was anything but peaceful. Elias Ron could feel it in his bones, a tension that hummed through the colony like an electric current. Reports from scouts indicated orbital disturbances, massive energy spikes, cloaked vessels maneuvering with terrifying precision, and fleets that seemed to appear out of nowhere. The Empire had learned, adapted, and now they were coming back for blood. From the void above, a shadow deeper than night blotted out the stars. The dread armada had arrived. Hundreds of warships, their hulls a lattice of plasma conduits, bristling with weaponry capable of leveling mountains. They did not descend immediately. No, the Xerans were patient. They studied the human, calculated the limits of ingenuity and endurance, and plotted their counterstrike with merciless care. Elias crouched within the colony's command dome, monitoring sensor feeds and orbital scans. The freighter fleet that had brought supplies now served as bait. Every maneuver, every decoy, was a carefully orchestrated gamble. Human minds thrived on chaos, but even Elias understood the razor's edge he walked. One mistake, and Nova Eden would be obliterated. The first strike came silently, a ghost fleet materializing at the edges of the system. Cloaked fighters moved like shadows over ice cliffs, targeting observation posts with surgical precision. The humans fired back with adaptive turrets and reflective plasma shields, but each shot revealed a terrifying truth. The Empire had studied them. Every previous tactic had been analyzed, every trap anticipated. Elias clenched his fists, jaw tight. He realized then that this battle was no longer just about survival, it was about evolution. The humans had forced the Xerans to think beyond brute force. Now the Empire was thinking in return, but human ingenuity, as always, thrived on unpredictability. He triggered the first of many contingencies. The frozen valleys of Nova Eden erupted with controlled avalanches, disorienting the descending strike teams. Turrets hidden beneath ice sheets unleashed plasma storms with split-second timing. Mines detonated in chains, turning the battlefield into a labyrinth of fire, ice, and calculated chaos. Despite the carnage, the Xerans pressed on. Their dreadnoughts descended, shields blazing, casting long shadows across the valleys. Elias knew he could not destroy them outright. This was not about matching power with power, but he could force them into a game of human design. Narrow passes, unstable ice cliffs, and engineered collapses became his tools. The Empire had the firepower. Humans had cunning, and cunning, when applied with precision, could topple giants. In the chaos, Elias moved with the fluidity of a predator, guiding colonists to safety, coordinating automated defenses, and exploiting every flaw the Xerans revealed. The battle was a dance, a deadly ballet of survival. Plasma beams slashed through snowstorms, shadows twisted with movement, and human minds anticipated, adapted, and countered. Hours bled into night. By the time the twin suns set, the dread armada had sustained losses that staggered even the Xerans' calculations. Ships were crippled, strike teams scattered, and for the first time, Elias felt the pulse of victory, but victory that came with the sobering knowledge that this war was far from over. From orbit, Ziran commanders observed silently. One thing had become painfully clear. Humans were not merely survivors. They were unpredictable, relentless, and terrifyingly creative. And the human, who had defied impossible odds, Elias Rane, was no longer just a thorn. He was a signal flare, a spark that threatened to ignite a wider rebellion across star systems. Elias stared at the shattered ice fields below, the glow of burning dreadnoughts painting the landscape in eerie reds and blues. He allowed himself a brief breath, knowing the Empire would strike again, smarter, faster, and deadlier. But he also knew this truth, carved deep into the core of humanity. No power, no matter how vast, could anticipate the full measure of human ingenuity, courage, and defiance. And somewhere in the shadowed void above, the Zirans plotted their next move, unaware that the human they sought to crush had already turned the odds into a battlefield where intelligence, creativity, and spirit outweighed fleets, weapons, and numbers. The Empire strikes back, but humans strike harder when the world expects them to fail. The skies above Nova Eden burned with the glow of distant explosions, a constant reminder that the Ziran Empire did not retreat lightly. Elias Rane crouched behind a ridge of fractured ice, eyes fixed on the horizon where shadows of enemy ships pierced the faint dawn. The humans were exhausted, but retreat was not an option. This was the moment where ingenuity had to become audacity, where survival had to become revolution. Intel from scattered scouts revealed the Empire's plan, a massive strike aimed at the colony's core, designed to crush morale and force surrender. The dreadnoughts had calculated human behavior, predicted defensive patterns, and sought to overwhelm every line of resistance. And yet, Elias smiled grimly. They had not predicted the human ability to turn even hopeless odds into advantage. Not fully. He activated the final contingency, Project Aurora, a network of hidden energy conduits, plasma amplifiers, and automated drones designed to harness the frozen environment itself as a weapon. Snow and ice were no longer obstacles. They were instruments of destruction, rigged to create storms, avalanches, and cascading electrical discharges. Every step the Zirans took would trigger consequences they could not anticipate. The first wave descended, ships cutting through clouds like black knives. Elias guided the colonists to subterranean shelters, then moved to higher ground to direct defenses. With a few precise commands, automated drones swarmed into positions along the ice cliffs, reflective plasma panels angled to redirect the dreadnought's fire, and concealed turrets prepared for calculated strikes. A cry shattered the tense morning air. Ziran boarding teams had breached the outer perimeter. Elias's pulse quickened. These were not the standard troops. These were specialists trained to adapt to unpredictability. But humans thrived on unpredictability. Elias activated the canyon traps, collapsing ice bridges under enemy feet, while drones unleashed concentrated plasma arcs that turned shadow into chaos. The boarding teams faltered, their formation shredded by a landscape they could not command. From orbit, the dreadnoughts opened fire. Plasma beams carved swaths through frozen valleys, the echoes resonating like thunder across the cliffs. Elias's countermeasure was audacious. He redirected energy from the Aurora network, focusing it into a massive electromagnetic pulse. The resulting surge knocked out shields, disabled targeting systems, and sent several ships spiraling out of control. The humans watched from cover as enemy craft crashed, shattering against ice cliffs with explosions that lit the sky in fiery blooms. Elias moved through the chaos, a ghost in motion. Every decision, every command had been calculated to maximize disruption while minimizing human loss. The Zirans, for all their power and precision, had underestimated one crucial variable, the human spirit. As the sun rose, casting red-gold light over the icy battlefield, the tide turned. Ziran forces were in disarray. Stragglers and surviving dreadnoughts struggled to maintain cohesion, their strategies collapsing under relentless, adaptive human resistance. Elias's counterattacks were precise, almost surgical, targeting engines, communications arrays, and critical nodes. Every strike amplified the disorientation, every move a statement. Humans could not be predicted, contained, or defeated by mere force. In the aftermath, Nova Eden survivors emerged from shelters, Eyes wide, they witnessed what humanity could achieve when strategy, courage, and ingenuity converged. Elias stood atop a ridge, watching the smoke rise from twisted hulls and shattered ice. For the first time, the humans had not only survived, they had dictated the terms of engagement, forcing the Empire to retreat and rethink their approach. Elias's mind raced ahead, already planning for the inevitable return of the Zirans. But in that fleeting moment, a simple truth crystallized. Survival was not enough. Humanity's strength lay in defiance, adaptability, and the willingness to confront impossible odds with creativity and courage. The Empire had sought to crush them, but in doing so, it had revealed a galaxy unprepared for the human heart. Above, the remaining Ziran ships lingered in orbit, silent and calculating. They had underestimated a human, yes, but more importantly, they had underestimated humanity itself. And Elias knew, with a certainty that burned brighter than any weapon, that the final confrontation was yet to come. But this time, the galaxy would witness a force it could never truly comprehend. Humans, unbroken, unyielding, and unstoppable. The battle was not over, but the tide had turned. The galaxy watched in silence. Nova Eden, scarred by fire and ice, stood as a testament to human defiance, a tiny world against the might of a star-spanning empire. Elias Ron surveyed the remnants of the battlefield from a ridge, his eyes tracing the shattered hulls of dreadnoughts and the smoldering valleys below. Victory had been hard won, but it was victory that carried a message louder than any weapon. Humans were unpredictable, relentless, and unbreakable. Even as the Ziran fleet retreated to distant orbit, Elias knew the Empire would return. They always did. But what they had learned in this encounter was more valuable than any victory they had ever achieved. The human mind could not be crushed by numbers, technology, or fear. Humanity had not only survived, they had dictated the terms of engagement, and in doing so, they had rewritten the rules of interstellar war. Colonists emerged from hidden shelters, faces streaked with soot and sweat, eyes wide with awe. Children clutched their parents, survivors embraced each other, and for the first time in weeks, laughter echoed across the frozen plains. Elias felt the pulse of life returning to Nova Eden. It was fragile, yet defiant, like humanity itself. Reports streamed in from across human-held systems. Word of Nova Eden's stand had traveled faster than any fleet, carried by whispers, transmissions, and the boundless curiosity of humans themselves. Planets that had once considered surrender now prepared to resist. Systems that had submitted to the Empire's might now questioned it. The story of one human defying a star empire had become a spark, igniting a galaxy-wide awareness of what humans were capable of. Elias turned to his closest lieutenants, their faces tired but resolute. "We've bought time," he said, voice steady. "But it's more than that. We've reminded the galaxy that humans cannot be predicted, cannot be controlled, and will not yield. That's our advantage. That's our weapon." A sudden tremor ran through the ridge, an aftershock of the previous battles, or perhaps a subtle warning from the planet itself. Elias did not flinch. He had learned to read the signals of both nature and enemy, to anticipate the unpredictable, and to use it to his advantage. Every decision, every gamble, had been a lesson in human resilience. Far above, the remaining Ziran dreadnoughts lingered, silent watchers in the void. Their commanders analyzed, recalculated, and strategized. But no calculation could fully encompass the human spirit. No algorithm could predict the ingenuity born of necessity, courage born of defiance, or resolve forged in the crucible of survival. The Empire had fought humans with weapons, tactics, and fleets, but humans had fought back with something far more formidable: their hearts, their minds, and their unyielding will. As night fell over Nova Eden, Elias looked at the stars above. Each one seemed to shine with a subtle acknowledgement, a quiet witness to humanity's triumph. He knew the fight was not over. Ziran fleets would return. Other empires might challenge humanity. But he also knew a truth that no power could erase. Humans were not merely survivors of circumstance. Humans were creators, adapters, and defiers of the impossible. He lowered his gaze to the valley below, where colonists were rebuilding shelters and tending to the wounded. The ice and fire of battle would fade, but the memory of resistance, courage, and ingenuity would endure. Humanity had carved its legacy not through conquest, but through defiance, and in that defiance lay hope, inspiration, and the promise of a future no empire could dictate. Elias whispered to the wind, a vow carried across the stars. We are human, we do not yield, we do not falter, and the galaxy will remember. The message was clear, resonant, and eternal. The human who had defied a star empire had become more than an individual. He had become a symbol of unpredictability, ingenuity, and the unbreakable spirit that no power, no matter how vast, could contain. And somewhere, in the silent reaches of the galaxy, the echo of that defiance reached the ears of friend and foe alike. One truth remained indisputable. To challenge humanity was to invite unpredictability, resilience, and relentless ingenuity. To underestimate humanity was to invite defeat. The stars above Nova Eden glimmered with silent applause. Humanity had not only survived, they had triumphed. The galaxy would never forget.